To go.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you can go ahead.
So hello everyone. Thanks for coming or just getting connected online. My name is Yamileth Marcano. I'm a dietitian at the Jewish General Hospital. I I've been working here in Canada for about 5 years, and since I did my equivalences here, I've been working pretty much in oncology. Right now, I'm covering mostly the hemato-oncology patients, but I also work with the McGill University Health Center Foundation for the breast cancer clinic. And that's pretty much it. I've been with Hope and Cope, I think for about a year and a half, and I have the honor to meet newly diagnosed breast cancer ladies and talk a little bit about nutrition. So in those conversations, we realize that there's a lot of things to say about nutrition and cancer. I think concerns and information on the internet is just growing, 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 and we never know what is true, what is not true. There's so many things to say. So I'm gonna try in this topic just to bring and to talk about the most common either myth, trends, or current diets that are being investigated to manage with cancer treatment. And I hope it meets your expectative, and that I can answer all of your questions. Uh, mm, Rosanna, as usual, okay, it works. Okay, so usually when we talk about nutrition and cancer, whenever we get a cancer diagnosis, one of the most common questions that patients or people have is, was it my fault that this whatever I was eating, whatever I was doing with my lifestyle, was the reason that I got a cancer diagnosis? And the answer to that question is simply no. There's no direct relationship, or not direct relationship. There's no a food item that is directly related to a cancer diagnosis. So not a specific food item caused your cancer diagnosis. However, there are some food items or some nutrients in the diet that have been related with an increase at that risk of developing cancer. So usually we're talking a little bit about environmental factors, we're talking about a little bit of genetics, and some nutrients or some compounds in those foods that has been related with cancer. They might just accelerate or work in a specific person. That doesn't mean that somebody that eats all these food related with high risk of cancer is going to develop a cancer as well. But we can take a little bit of manners in our hands and try to modify our lifestyle just to prevent that risk either of a new cancer diagnosis, or even if we already have a cancer diagnosis, to prevent or to decrease the risk to have a recurrence of a new diagnosis of cancer. So in terms of diet or healthy lifestyle, what are those factors that are related directly to an increase in risk in cancer? So first, we're talking about overweight. It has been related, overweight, um, in the past it used to be measured by the body mass index, which is a simple relationship between your weight and your height. And the World Health Organization established that the higher that index is, the higher risk we have not just to develop cancer but other chronic diseases like diabetes, hypertension, metabolic syndrome, etc., including cancer. So now we know that that index is not completely accurate in the sense that it's not really our overall weight that is related with these chronic diseases, but it's mostly our fat storages or high fat storages. Because if we have a higher weight, but we do have a high muscle mass, this risk of chronic diseases decreases. So this is the first thing. Of course, through diet and through a healthy diet, we can control, we can manage that overweight, decreasing the risk of developing a cancer. The second food item or nutrient that has been directly related, specifically with mostly with breast cancer, is saturated fat. So there's a lot of talk about dairy products. Are they good, or they're just making worse in my cancer, or they're just increasing my risk of cancer? So actually, it's not the dairy products. We're talking about saturated fat, which is the fat that we found in animal products, any animal products, or the fats that are transformed in industry, what we know better now with as a trans fat. So again, usually this fat we found in higher fat animal products and in all processed kind of fat or fried food. Specifically with colon cancer, it has been related to increase the risk when we talk about cold cuts or the charcuterie like pepperoni, chorizo, sausages. And again, it's very hard to determine if this high risk factor is just because it's cold cuts. It has been related to the nitrates, but we know also that all these kind of meats or cold cuts, they also have a high content of saturated fat. Same thing with red meat. It has been directly related with increased risk of colorectal cancer. So the current recommendations is that we try to go for not that more than 2 times a week red meats in smaller portions. Again, it has been directly related with colorectal cancer. However, we kind of transcribe or we use this recommendation for general population. The other factor in terms of diet and nutrition that has been related directly with an increased risk of cancers is alcohol. So we usually recommend or we suggest people to keep the guidelines of 1 serving of alcohol per day in women and 2 servings of alcohol per day in men's daily. If you don't drink daily, unfortunately, this is not accumulated. So let's say if you don't drink the whole week, it's not the weekend, you can have all your 5 drinks per day. And this alcohol recommendation is very controversial because depending of the disease or depending of the health condition that we're talking about, sometimes we recommend for prevention. And when we recommend for prevention to include the alcohol, we're talking mostly about red wine for the antioxidants present, like the polyphenols so it's not really all alcohol that is included. And last but not least, we're talking about physical activity as a part of a healthy lifestyle. So decrease on physical activity, it has been also related with an increased risk of cancer. So if we put all these 4 items together and we take a look on the first one that I mentioned, that it was overweight. So we know that overeating, eating high fat foods because they are high calorie foods, drinking excess on alcohol, and being sedentary or not doing enough physical activity, all of them are going to take me or are going to increase my risk to being overweight. So really, it's very hard to say if the increased risk is a mix of everything or it's just separated factors. Is one the cause of the other? But in general, these are the factors that has been directly related with an increased risk of cancer. So when we talk again about diet, there's so many things to say. I'm just trying to make like a summary of the most common myth related to nutrition that everybody pretty much is very constant. Every patient asks about these items that I'm gonna mention. So if I eat sugar, am I gonna feed my cancer? So the answer and the straight answer is no. Because sugar or sugar is kind of our energy. It's kind of the gasoline that our body needs. So sugar, we mainly get it from carbohydrates. So what we need to make in consideration is the type of sugar. So we have two type of sugar: the ones that we're gonna eat it, and our body is gonna take them and absorb them very slow, and the one that we're gonna eat and they're gonna absorb very fast. So we're talking about, like here, we're talking about carbohydrates, simple and complex. So in a regular normal diet, what we recommend is just to keep it as low sugar as we have, as you can. Why? Because the sugar, when we eat it, it's gonna produce the glucose, which is like I said before, is like our gasoline. The glucose is what is gonna feed all of our cells, the good ones and the bad ones. So when we eat this sugar, our glucose levels are gonna increase, and in response to that, because to use for our body to use that glucose or that sugar, they need like a transport, like a vehicle that's gonna bring that sugar into my cell in order to produce energy. So this sugar is the insulin, or this vehicle is the insulin. So when we eat sugar, the insulin goes high, and the insulin is a hormone that is a growth hormone that it has been related with inflammation. It has been related with it's a growth hormone, so with cell growth and especially fatty cells growth. So what we need to do is to try to get this sugar out of the best quality carbohydrate that I'm going to talk to you a little bit later. But what happens if we don't eat sugar at all is that we're going to starve our body, and our body is not going to have the energy to function normally. So just to say this myth is false. We like sugar feeds our body, gives the energy to our body, so we need it. We just need to choose a little bit healthier sugar than a bad quality sugar. And the sugar itself, yes, it does feed our cancer cell, because the cancer cells, they are fed the way your normal cells are fed as well. It's just to have a nice balance between the good quality sugars and the bad quality sugars that I will explain a little bit later on. So there's also a lot of question as, should I have organic food? Are those pesticides creating my cancer, that causing mutations in my body? So the answer to this is that scientific research hasn't shown any benefits in organic food versus regular food. If you want it as a personal choice, you can have it. It's a little bit more expensive, but so far, scientific studies said there's no difference between organic and non-organic. What is important, just to wash very well your foods, and you try to remove a little bit of all these pesticides. In Canada, we have some regulation for the pesticides. So in theory, everything that we eat is supposed to be safe. Specifically with breast cancer, we have the soy products and the phytoestrogen. So back in the days, in the past, we know that a good percentage of the breast cancer diagnosis, they are estrogen receptors positive. So the main treatment is just to remove or block this estrogen production, just to reduce the risk of recurrence in the cancer. So in the past, just because the soy products and other food like um, I always forget the name in English. Grain de lin is like I'll come back later with the name in English. If somebody can type it, grain de lin, uh, I would appreciate. Every natural product that has, hold on a minute. I'm so sorry about it.
Flax seeds.
Flax seeds. Yes, perfect. Oh my God, I just I forgot the word in English. Flaxseed, soy products, including milk, tempeh, edamame, tofu. In the past, we thought that these products would increase the risk of cancers because they would add estrogens in our body. However, as time goes on and research goes on, we know that these two type of estrogens are different. So the estrogen that our body produces is like kind of an animal or estrogens, rather than these products are vegetable estrogens, and they have two different receptors on the body. In fact, recent studies show that if we eat soy products, or products with high content of phytoestrogens since the childhood, or when we're growing up, we have a protective effect. So this protective effect, it decreases as later we introduce the soy products or the phytoestrogens to our diet. However, the current recommendations, they continue to encourage breast cancer diagnosis ladies to eat soy products as a regular recommendation, which is 1 to 2 portions per day. So when we're talking about one portion is around like a glass of soya milk, or it could be a cup of edamame, or it could be like a small piece, like square of tofu. We don't recommend anymore to avoid soy products. And indeed, plant-based products, so soy products, now they have been recommended more into a plant-based diet that I'm gonna talk a little bit more about actually. So superfoods, all these foods uh, that has been like chia seeds or berries or I don't know, like all these super omega 3, all these products that they have been brought up as a unique food that is going to cure cancer, is going to reduce the inflammation, is going to cure diabetes. So unfortunately, there's no superfood. Usually, when we're talking about a balanced diet, or we're talking about nutrition guidelines recommendations, we talk about more like getting a little bit of nutrients from a variety of diet, each kind of food, and together we're going to have a protective effect. But when we eat probably too much of one specific food, or when we eat one unique food just to have those protective effects, we're probably going to be missing or having some other deficiencies from other food. So in our current guideline recommendations, we don't recommend superfoods. We recommend a variety of food that is going to give antioxidants, that is going to give a lot of vitamins, minerals, just to have healthy and balanced nutrition. And that way, we're not going to be deficient on other nutrients. Artificial sweeteners, they have been related for a long time with increasing cancer. However, the artificial sweeteners allowed in the market, I think now we have 5 type of artificial sweeteners. So they all go through studies about the Food and Drug Administration, and they're considered to be safe. Usually, when an artificial sweetener it's or for it to create a toxicity or a secondary effect, usually the doses go per gram per kilogram. So if we're talking about the sucralose, which we know as Splenda, the toxic doses is gonna be like 1 gram per kilogram. So let's say in my case, it's like 55 grams per day. And usually when we take artificial sweeteners, we take like very small quantities. So it hasn't been proven, or it hasn't been related, or enough studies with an increase in cancer, and this is why Food Drug Administration still have them permitted. There's a lot of people say that every time that a new artificial sweetener is going to come in the market, then the trend comes up that certain of them, they cause, cause, cause cancer. And the actual reason behind it is probably publicity. So there's not enough studies that artificial sweeteners are related to cancer. So the 5 that are approved by the Food and Drug Administration are safe to use in small quantities. Aspartame, sucralose, stevia, acesulfate K, and I'm missing one that I'm not remembering the name right now. But everything basically that is on the counters or on the supermarket, you can use safely in small quantities. And food avoidance, it goes a little bit with the same principle of the superfood. If we start to remove certain food from our diet, then we might fear that we're going to create some kind of deficiency. So again, as I said, there's no a specific food that is going to cause directly a cancer. It's a mix of factors, and is a mix of just to say not the adequate lifestyle. So we should avoid food avoidances. Despite this, it's going to be a little bit contradictory of what I'm going to talk about further on my trendy diet. But we should avoid to restrain any specific food from the diet. Again, there's not a unique food item that is going to cause a cancer. We have better quality food and we have lower quality food. And us as a dietitians, what we try to create is a good relationship with food. So yes, there's bad quality or worse quality food, and there's best quality food, but they all exist. So we don't want to say like this food is bad, this food is good. It's just a matter of what we should be choosing on a daily basis, and what which we should be choosing in a less frequent basis to prevent the development of or the high risk of any chronic disease, including cancer. Okay, so I just want to talk about these specific trendy diets and what's the science behind it, because more and more patients come to the consultation, or more and more patients come to the hospital demanding these kind of regimens, asking about what is it true, should I need to be fasting, should I be on a ketogenic diet, should I be vegan, should I avoid this, avoid that. So this, in my personal practice, I just mentioned here pretty common questions that I receive from patients. If you have any other question, we can for sure discuss it at the end. So ketogenic diet and cancer. So basically, I'm going to explain a little bit what is a ketogenic diet. So a ketogenic diet is a very, very low carbohydrate diet, and we're talking about less than 50 grams of carbohydrate per day, with usually a normal quantity of protein and a very, very high quantity of fat to compensate the deficit on the carbohydrates. As I mentioned before, usually our main source of energy is the glucose, or the sugar that we call glucose, and that glucose comes mainly from the carbohydrates. What happens is that all of our body uses the glucose as the main source of protein. However, or all of our cells, except for the brain cells, they might adjust to use alternative routes of energy if we put them in an emergency state. So basically what this diet do is that instead of taking the energy from the glucose, because we don't have enough carbohydrate to produce it, the fat coming from the diet, they're gonna produce, or they're gonna convert in something that we call ketone bodies. And these ketone bodies are gonna be the main source of energy. So initially, I'm talking about, I think, 1980s, this diet was created specifically for epileptic children, because it changed a little bit all of the neurotransmitters, all the way that the brain takes the energy to function. and it uses these ketone bodies to produce the energy that we need. So it was shown, and actually is a therapeutic diet for children with epilepsy, in which treatment is not an option or is not working. So they try ketogenic diet to reduce the epileptic crisis. So what's the science behind the ketogenic diet and cancer? So basically, when we're talking about specifically ketogenic diet and intermittent diet, those are regimens that are being studied, and most of the studies are being or completed are done in mouse or mice. And now they're starting to get small groups of people to start studies in human. So the two diets are used not on their own, but as an adjuvant therapy with chemotherapy or radiotherapy, and they're recommended because of their properties to make the chemotherapy treatment more efficient. So again, what's the mechanism? I'm gonna go to explain a little bit what is an intermittent diet, and then I'm gonna explain the mechanism because it seems to be a little bit linked. So intermittent diets, there's many type of intermittent diets. So we have intermittent diets where we have periods of fasting, and the periods of fasting could go from days to a few hours. The most common is 8 hours and 16 hours non-fasting. It could be 24/24. It could be 2 days and a week of eating. So there's many methods. And when we say fasting, it's not necessarily not eating anything. Sometimes we go under 300 calories per day. So again, these diets are not I mean, it's not a guideline, it's not a recommendation. Studies are on the process, but both of them, they have been showing some positive effects into reducing the speed of the tumor cell growing, increasing the what we call apoptosis or the dying of the cancer cell, and improving or increasing the efficacy of treatments like chemotherapy and radiotherapy. What I'm saying here is important for you to take a little bit with a grain of salt. Food restriction, as I said before, they might cause nutrient deficiency. So if you ever want to try ketogenic diet, intermittent diet for cancer treatment, or as co-therapy with cancer treatment, you should really consult a professional because there's a lot of micronutrient and deficiency. So basically, how this diet works, or what it has been explained, is that when we put the body to a fasting state, and the ketogenic diet, even if we're not fasting, it goes into the same principle because we're removing all the carbohydrate. As I said before, is our main source of energy. We put our body into a fasting, and our body tends to go to an adaptation process. So our metabolism decrease, we use less energy. There's metabolic reactions that happen just to adapt. So our body is so intelligent that we try to survive all the time. And what it has been studied is that our normal cells, non-cancer cells, they have the ability to adjust and try to survive to this fasting or lack of energy, while the cancer cells, they are not able to adjust. So if we do this fasting period, and then we attack with either chemotherapy or radiotherapy, the enhance of killing the cancer cell is going to be improved versus is going to be or normal cell is going to be maintained. So this is a little bit what it has been studied. This intermittent diet or ketogenic diet are recommended only like again, not as a single treatment, only as a co-therapy with chemotherapy. And the fasting periods should be in line with the chemotherapy periods. So let's say you're gonna have, there's many cycles, there's many ways that we can give chemotherapy, but let's say you're gonna have 5 days of chemotherapy, and then 3 weeks of rest, and then 5 days again. So the recommendation is to start fasting 24 hours before chemotherapy, during chemotherapy, and then 24 hours before, to see that effect. Again, this is just studies, it's not a recommendation. Remember that when we're talking about health care guidelines, we go through many years of studies. We have to go to big groups. We have to really repeat and repeat studies, and have all the time the same results in order for those changes become a guideline and a recommendation. So this that I'm talking about is not a recommendation. It's not what we do, but it's like a promising step maybe into cancer treatment in the future. Again, if you want to go through these diets, if you want to start these processes, it's always good to consult a professional, a nutritionist, a dietitian, who's going to guide you to avoid any kind of deficiency in the diet.
Mm.
Okay.
No.
So the other diet is vegetarian diet, vegan diet. These actually, it has been studied, it has been proved, it's part of the guidelines and the recommendation that a plant-based diet, it's proven to decrease the risk, not just cancer, again, all the chronic diseases, obesity, hypertension, diabetes, metabolic syndrome. So with this saying, I'm not saying that you should become vegetarian, but we do encourage people to get as much as plant-based food as possible. And even if you can, just maybe try for like 1 day a week, a vegetarian day week, and just try to decrease the consumption of in general, like meats, and especially red meats. Uh, I put it here. It's not that common, but I have a few people asking about methionine and a relationship with cancer, and or a methionine diet free or free diet. So basically, methionine is an essential amino acid. It's a protein, and when I mean essential, is that we don't, the body itself cannot produce it, so we have to get it from food. And just because it's an amino acid, it's coming with or from high protein sources like meat, fish, eggs, nuts, especially Brazilian nuts, tofu, cheese. And it has been as well a few studies that shows that methionine increases the antioxidant properties, decreases the what we call the reactive oxygen substances that increase oxidation, and also helps with the killing faster the cancer cell. However, this is very less trendy than the other diets. So at this moment, there's no many studies going on the methionine diet. The main issue or the main contraindication of this diet is when we're going to a cancer, when we're going to therapies like chemotherapy, radiotherapy, surgery for the cancer, or protein needs are increased, and methionine, it comes with all high protein products, so it would be a very restricted diet that probably would promote muscle mass wasting, sarcopenia, which is again muscle mass wasting, and longer recovery periods. That for the methionine diet. And then we have the turmeric, curcuma. A lot of patients use this as a like curcuma tea or curcuma powder or curcuma pills in context of oxidation. So again, it has been studied. I think there's still studies going on in terms of turmeric or curcuma, and it has been related as well with which is antioxidant properties. So especially with radiotherapy, it has been some studies going on that it decreases the the excess of stress and oxidation going through chemotherapy. It might actually be helpful as a co-therapy with the radiotherapy. However, again, it hasn't been studied in terms of a guidelines or recommendation. There's nothing concrete, but many of the studies that has been completed, they recommend or they have been using between 8 or 12 milligrams of turmeric or curcuma per day, and these doses has been found to be safe. I just want to make a point that usually during active treatment, either chemotherapy or radiotherapy, because our objective with the treatment is to oxidate and destroy cancer cells, we try to avoid any kind of antioxidant during the treatment, meaning like omega-3 or mega doses, vitamin C, vitamin A, because we want to be sure that or therapy is going to be maximized, and there's nothing that could just decrease the efficacy. However, the turmeric, again, in 8 to 12 milligrams, it seems to not have any effects or contradictory effects with the treatment. Again, this is not a recommendation, it's just some studies here and there that they have been published. So basically, what is actual recommendation, published, written, and what we base our recommendations on? This is the new Canadian Food Guide. Well, not that new anymore. I think it has been 2 years now, but not many people have seen it before. So this, it kind of synthesize or presents everything or every myth, every trendy diet, it's put into this plate. So if you see this plate, if we analyze, we have half of the plate, it's fruit and vegetables, especially vegetables. So what's the property of the vegetable? First, they're going to be high fiber. So in terms of sugar absorption, insulin response is going to be lower. So inflammation, fat storages, cancer cell growing, they're going to be reduced or decreased or improved. Also, another particularity of vegetables and fruits, they of course they have a lot of vitamin, minerals, antioxidants. And when I say antioxidants, they do have a lot, but they do have micro doses. It's not like we're taking a pill of vitamin C or a pill of omega-3 or a pill of. So when I talk about we shouldn't be having any mega doses of antioxidants during active treatment, vegetables and fruits, they don't count in them because they give micro quantities that are going to still be beneficial for our diet. And the other particularity of the vegetables and fruit and vegetables, especially vegetables, is that they are considered what we call low caloric density food, meaning that in a good amount, they give little calories. So when we go back to the ketogenic diet, when we go back to the intermittent fasting, or just the principle that obesity, overweight increases my risk of cancer, all these studies are based into a calorie restriction. So if we have a diet that or a daily diet that it represents this plate, we're going to have a big quantity of food, but half of it is going to be food that is not going to be caloric or is not going to give enough calories in order for us to increase the weight. Then if we go to the other side, we have a quarter of the plate that is starches, like sugars or cereals, grains. And if you see the image is, I mean, it's not unique to these starches represented here, but what we want to, the message that we want to give is that ideally it should be less refined carbohydrate, high fiber, like quinoa is high fiber. If you're going to choose rice, try to go for white rice that is less refined, or brown rice that it has more fiber, whole wheat bread, whole wheat pasta. Again, I'm not saying just go to the groceries and now from now on get everything whole wheat, but it's just a good balance. The much fiber that you have on your diet, the more your metabolic response and less metabolic stress, inflammation you're gonna have. When we talk about protein, then again, we want to try to choose around the quantity a quarter of a plate. We want to try to choose lean proteins, like the less saturated fat possible. If we're talking about dairy products, just try to go for low fat dairy products, 0 to maximum 2%. We include in the protein groups, again, plant-based protein sources like beans, nuts, seeds, tofu, just to go into a coherence with the guidelines that are approved. So again, what is proof that it might reduce or have a benefit on my health in terms of risk of cancer? Plant-based diets. I repeat, I'm not recommending for you to go vegetarian or vegan tomorrow. It's just to try to make more conscious choices and try to reduce the frequency of the consumption of the animal sources. So red meat, cold cuts, directly related with colorectal cancer. We kind of transpolate or we transmit this guideline for every kind of cancer. High fiber, whole grains, starches, bean, fruits and vegetables. Omega-3, again, from the diets, nuts, seeds, fish are good sources of omega-3. I made a point here, important hydration, because when we're talking about active treatment, again, chemotherapy, radiotherapy, it's very important to be well hydrated. We wanna increase our urine output. We wanna pee a lot just to try to avoid to get rid of all those toxins that we're putting into our body. Again, when we're going through treatment, sometimes our appetite is not good, so our hydration gets compromised. So it's very important to keep in mind hydration. The best choice is always water when you're healthy, when you don't have any decreased appetite or any symptoms affecting your intake. However, when you're not eating much, let's say, especially chemotherapy patients, they go through a period where they might have symptoms, mucositis, diarrhea. Sorry, mucositis is like ulcers in the mouth, or it's painful, it hurts, diarrhea, low appetite, nausea, vomiting. So in that case, we still encourage hydration, but we try to use more liquids are going to be a little bit more nutritious than water because we're not eating much. So we want to try to get a little bit more calories. It could be juices, it could be milk, it could be either nutritional supplements if we have to, but it's important to be hydrated. Alcohol, again, excess of alcohol directly related with increased risk of cancer. It's also increased risk of overweight. And the other thing is that when we're going through active treatment, chemotherapy, radiotherapy, we have an even hormone replacement for the hormone blockers for the hormone receptor cancers. We do have high risk of osteoporosis. So alcohol, it decreases the or it affects the storage of the calcium in the bones. So it increases even more the risk of osteoporosis. So just try to keep it low in alcohol. Exercise, very important. Anti-inflammatory properties, weight or calorie expenditure, avoiding muscle mass wasting during surgeries, during treatment, during periods of active illness, and of course, managing the overweight. And I think that's it for me. I don't know. I think let me see the chat. I don't know if the chat they have a few questions. I don't know, Ruthana, if you want.
One says, I'm on a low fiber diet, no whole wheat.
Yes, exactly. So of course, this is like general recommendations. We have a lot of like conditions or particularities of all these recommendations. So usually, I don't know the reason why now you are in a low fiber diet, but usually we recommend low fiber diet most of the time. There are exceptions in a temporary way. It could be either because chemotherapy is giving me a lot of diarrhea. So we recommend a low fiber diet just to avoid any overload in the gastrointestinal tract. Sometimes in order to or as a strategy, we try to give you sources of soluble fiber just to improve the diarrhea, but you can have as well the fiber on your diet if you're in a low fiber like again, we don't recommend low fiber diets forever. We usually recommend it for active period of disease or inflammation, and then we recommend reintroduction of the fiber very slow. If you're going to be in a low fiber for a long period of time, depending of the symptoms you have, you can have just uh, periods of you can do slowly reintroduction of small amounts, so you can have the fiber and you don't have the negative or the secondary effects. How about sparkling water? No issues. Sparkling water is good for, I mean, it doesn't have any contraindication. So nothing to say about that. If you like it, enjoy it. I do too.
Uh, oh,
Okay.
oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. Hello. I have finished my chemo recently. I'm gonna start my, hormone therapy. So I'm going to take pills, medications. So I wanted just to know more about the diet I'm gonna, take, which really is compatible with my situation. I know about the side effect of the medication, so something because I have already have the joint pains, bone pains because of the chemo. So I want to know how could I overcome it regarding the diet part.
Okay, so again, as I said, there's no, I mean, there's no specific diet. What happened with the hormone therapy that you're gonna have, if that you're gonna be or they're gonna simulate a menopausic state, so your estrogen levels are gonna be completely shut down. What happened is the estrogen. Usually is hormone that helps or works with the metabolism. Also, usually our body composition, when we have no estrogen, is that our muscle mass, which usually is more active, is going to tend to decrease, and the fat mass is going to tend to increase. So the fat mass is less active in our body. So that's why you tend to have more gain weight. So the recommendations are general in terms of a healthy diet. Try to go a little bit lower portions, lower caloric density food, just to try to maintain your weight. Physical activity is very important. Just try to do, if you're not into exercise, active exercise, at least like a little bit of a high speed walk, just because again, when we're talking about weight, I mean, there's many factors playing in our weight, but a simple way to understand or a basic how it starts is that we should eat less, or we should, to maintain our weight, we should eat as much as we spend. If we want to lose weight, we want to eat less than what we expend in order to create a negative state, right? So just because your metabolism probably is going to decrease a little bit, then you may need to adjust a little bit to reduce the portion, the sizes, choose a little bit more wisely, lower calorie foods, and increase your active physical activity in order to try to maintain as much as possible your muscle mass and also to expend more calories.
A few more questions in the chat, and then I'll
Yeah.
move to the email questions.
You mentioned that 80 to 12 milligrams of turmeric is not problematic for therapy, but supplements are often up to 400, should be recommended for anti-inflammatory properties. So again, all of the, usually the pharmacists talk to you before having it. I mean, unfortunately, nutritionist is not always present, but pharmacy always makes a review of your list of medication. So all of the natural products and mega doses, vitamin, minerals, they're gonna remove it. Including turmeric, 4,000 milligrams. You can have it before or after therapy. And when I say before and after, we recommend from 2 weeks to a month before, from 2 weeks to a month after. just to avoid any contraindication. Is a very, very high doses, so we don't want to take a chance. So in this case, if you're taking turmeric, you should stop it depending of how frequent are your cycles. Let's say if your cycles are every 3 weeks, probably you're not going to have the time to do a reintroduction. So you're probably going to wait until the end of the treatment after 6 months to have a reintroduction of the turmeric. But you can use, for example, if you still want to get a little bit of the properties, you can use it in your natural food.
I'll
Sorry.
move to a question in the that was emailed. It said, for patients who are on maintenance program and whose weight is stabilized, are there long-term suggestions for having a well-balanced diet?
No, again, what we recommend in general terms is this balanced plate, the really the Food Canadian guide. I think this time we got it right on the recommendations. I mean, again, studies and guidelines, they take long time to be changed. So probably we're going to be sticking on to this for a while. So my recommendation is just try to keep it to a healthy lifestyle. And again, there's no bad foods. So if you one day you want to have a chocolate, if you one day you want to go to the restaurant and eat, I don't know, your favorite food, McDonald's, Chinese restaurants, you can do it. The important thing is not to do it often. Remember that when we're talking about higher risk of developing a disease from the food or from anything, is because we tend to submit our body to a constant aggression. So that eventually is going to hit our body. But if you submit your body, let's say you do this into your arm. So you do it one time and it might be bothering, but it's not going to hurt you. But if you do this 20 times a day, every day, and you punch, eventually probably you're going to have an ulcer. So it's the same thing with food. If we give to our food, I mean, one day or eventually, occasionally, one bad meal or less healthy meal, I mean, we're just gonna enjoy it and that's it. The important thing is not to submit our body to aggressions in a constant basis.
A question about chemo and things to help with nausea.
Yeah, so unfortunately, like for food itself, it's hard to control, it's hard to prevent. You're most of the time gonna have chemo. They're gonna give you medication. A few tips to avoid nausea, like ginger ale, patients adore it. You can have, or you can avoid to have solid meals with liquids at the same time because your gastric pouch gets more full and there's tendency to have a little bit more reflux. Gravity sometimes makes an effect. So if you eat, try to walk a little bit so your digestion works a little bit better and to avoid reflux. Again, for nausea, you can have dry stuff, usually like dry meals like bread, cookies, jam. They usually work well with controlling the nausea. But to be honest with you, it's a lot of medication that's going to control the nausea.
And then for neutropenia, is it recommended to avoid foods like grapefruits, green tea?
Okay, so neutropenia is one thing. For chemotherapy itself, so grapefruit, green tea, pomelo, star fruits, and pomegranates, and I'm missing one, orange Sevilla, just the Sevilla orange, which is, to be honest with you, I've never seen them in the grocery stores. Those 5 or 6 food items, we avoid them just because they might metabolize in the same place that the chemotherapy does, most of the chemotherapy agents. So we avoid them during chemotherapy, and again, maybe 2 weeks. Some pharmacists said even like 48 hours before and after, just to avoid any decrease efficacy on the treatment because they go to the same mitochondrial space. But it's not for neutropenia. Neutropenia usually is defined by your immune system. So white blood cells, your neutrophils specifically, they are low. So what happens is when our immune system is depleted, immunosuppressed, is not working, we have no defense to any aggressors, outside aggressors, and we are higher risk of infection. So basically, there's a few recommendations specifically for neutropenia, but basically we have to focus on food security, meaning food safety, hand washing, food washing, counters washing, avoid cross contamination when we're cooking, uh, conserving the food at the right temperature, cooking everything that is raw. And like further, I think I see one about sushi, sashimi,
Sushi
raw
and
fish.
caffeine as well.
So again, if you are not in treatment, active treatment, you can have sushi, sashimi, and raw fish. If you're chemotherapy, what happens usually is a secondary effect from the chemotherapy, and it goes usually from 4 days after chemotherapy. It could go on through 2 3 weeks that your immune system is not working well. Again, if you're having cycles with chemotherapy every 3 weeks, then you might not be your immune system might not recover enough in order to do so. You should try to avoid all the raw food just for the period that you have active chemotherapy, and at least 4 weeks after. So again, it's not just the raw fish. For example, like rare meat or bleeding meat, you should be avoiding everything that is not cooked. Basically, everything that you cannot guarantee how the manipulation is. For example, when you go to the charcuterie or you go to the counter, and you ask for ham or you ask for whatever, prosciutto, whatever you want that you ask on the counter, they manipulate all these big machines, these big pieces of meat. So you're not sure how they were manipulated. So that you should avoid. You should avoid non-pasteurized dairy products, preparations, again, with eggs that are not well cooked.
There's a question about IGF growth factor,
Yeah.
and if it actually makes tumors grow. And then another question had asked about keto diet, if it also helps shrink tumor.
Okay, so hold on a minute. Helps things like tumors grow. Is that just affect different levels of exercises? So is the opposite. The usually what it like the IGF is the insulin-like growth factor. So it's like it has similar effects to insulin, and usually exercises decreases because the uptake of insulin is maximized, and you produce anti-inflammatory substances. So the insulin growth factor usually is not increased in the exercise, and the exercise it has no properties on the tumor growth. Sorry.
Two questions about yogurt, and if it's okay or if there's a specific brand.
So, okay, chemotherapy, okay, yogurt, as long as it's not probiotic yogurt. Again, when we're immunosuppressed, probiotics are living bacteria. The yogurt itself, it has some bacteria culture, but they're not alive. The probiotics are living bacteria, so we should avoid. Yogurt is okay. Everything that is pasteurized, and but not probiotic added. Glucerna ensured drink during chemo, it's okay. Again, if you're not having good appetite, if you're really not eating anything, we use nutritional supplements as a tool. There are strategies, there are calories. There's a lot of people lately that they have being like a little bit against nutritional supplements because they're based on a lot of sugar. So my first recommendation before going to Glucerna ensured drinks is just to try to optimize with your normal diet. Just try to have small meals more often. You can do snacking. You can try smoothies with natural food, with milk, Greek yogurt that is high protein. You can put a little bit of nuts, a little bit of seeds, peanut butter. You can try again snacking with pieces of cheese. So my first choice is always going to be natural food. If you really are in a period, and it happens very often, where you cannot eat anything at all because either you don't have the strength, either you don't have the appetite, even everything tastes different, but you're enjoying or you're able to go through the Glucerna and Ensure drink, yes, those are sources of calories, and they prevent nutrition wasting. They prevent malnutrition, when you need it, you can have it. Spicy food, again, if you're having diarrhea, we recommend not to have spicy food, just because it's aggressive to the GI tract. But if you're tolerating a spicy food, it's okay. And actually, sometimes chemotherapy treatments, they change the taste on the everything, the food. Sometimes they remove the taste completely. So we recommend maybe spice it up a little bit just to try to enhance the flavor of the food. So as long as you tolerate, go for it. What about caffeine? Nothing on caffeine. There's no, again, for if you're having diarrhea, caffeine might stimulate your bowel movement, so it might worsen your diarrhea. Nothing related with cancer, so no studies there, at least no that I know of. So if you like coffee, you can have 1 to 2 cups of coffee per day. If they're not strong, you can have maybe 3 or 4. Nothing to say on caffeine unless you have diarrhea. Does anyone know if we can buy pasteurized eggs in Quebec? Oh, I don't know. I really don't know. But the regular eggs, as long as they're cooked, is okay. The issue is if you want to do like a meringue or a pastry cream and you don't want to cook them, that's an issue. Or if you want to do a smoothie with an egg. I really don't know. You may check if the white eggs that they sell in the carton, maybe those are pasteurized, but I'm really not sure. I've never bought them. I reached out to our oncologist to ask about intermittent diet, but he did not have much information. Yeah, so again, I would say just to go to a professional because it's very hard to find reliable information on the internet. Intermittent fasting is not something that you're going to find in new guidelines. It's scientific studies here and there. I didn't mention it before with the ketogenic diet, intermittent fasting. They do have shown benefit effects, but it's also a specific tumor. So, for example, ketogenic diet, they have more positive results in central nervous system or brain tumors versus other sides. So I wouldn't know how to direct your question. You can go to research websites, like I use a lot PubMed, where you have articles and research. But again, the research here and there, that doesn't mean there is a recommendation. So what I would suggest just for you to go to a professional in terms of for it to guide you how to do an intermittent diet that you're not going to be or having any deficiency in any specific micro or micronutrients. Is yogurt with active bacterial culture okay? Yes, they all have active bacterial culture. It's just the added probiotics that should avoid. Hold on, I think I went too fast. Those probiotics, active bacterial cultures. Yes and no. There are probiotics with like they are active bacterial culture, but there are different types of it. So everything that has probiotic added, you shouldn't have. Again, like the yogurt, just for the fermentation process, they do have some active bacterial culture, but the probiotic they add extra. So this is what you should avoid. But yes, in general, probiotics are also active bacterial culture. Thank you. You're welcome. My pleasure. Egg whites okay as long as they're cooked. Yes. Is calcium magnesium supplement okay? Usually yes. Anything that is not an antioxidant, so like B family vitamins, they should be okay. Also, if you're eating well, you probably don't need it. But yes, B vitamins are okay. Vitamin D, calcium, usually if you're not eating enough, you should have them. Vitamin D is a pretty much standard. Everybody that starts treatment, doctor prescribe, because again, we have high risk of osteoporosis. Is COVID vaccine recommended? Yes. Yeah, it's recommended COVID vaccine if you're not actively immunosuppressed. meaning like you can have if you're active treatments, you have to discuss it with your doctor and you have to be approved by your doctor if your neutrophils are low. But if you are a past history of cancer treatment and you're somehow immunosuppressed, yes, COVID vaccine is recommended. um, can we eat rare meat or soft-boiled eggs again? Again, if you're immunosuppressed, no, not in the period you are neutropenic. If your neutrophils are recovered, yes, you can eat it, or smoked salmon, the same group, you can eat it after. And when I say after, usually we give a period of like 4 weeks after chemotherapy to make sure that your immune system is really completely recovered. So yes, you eventually you're going to be able to eat it. Hello, everyone. We'll be in the session in a few minutes. Thank you for attending. Okay, I think Rutana, I think you had a few questions on the like they were sent by email.
Yes, in
I
the
can.
email you went over some of them. I already asked some of them. One maybe that was left. There was one on intermittent fasting, if it helps the chemo, and then another one on the keto diet, if it's safe to use.
Okay, and I think there was somebody, I don't know if I read that it says like diet to prevent during chemo and after chemo or something like this.
Yes.
So basically, to prevent cancer and after chemo is going to be healthy diet. During chemo, it's going to really change depending of your symptoms. Again, during chemotherapy, radiotherapy, we're destroying. So we want to make sure we have a proper nutrition to build, to reconstruct all the cells that were destroyed. So what we want to make sure is to have protein sources every time, just to avoid the muscle mass wasting. We want to have enough energy in order, or enough calories in order to maintain our weight. And we want to, of course, have all these vitamins, minerals, antioxidants from the diet. So if you have specific symptoms like decreased appetite, ulcers in your mouth, diarrhea, then it is going to be a little bit of changes during the treatment, but pretty much before, after, to prevent is a healthy diet in general. And
there's one about, before I go to the last one in the chat, there was one about sugar and cut, if it should be completely cut it out.
Yeah,
or,
I kind of got it. Again, like we, in a healthy diet, somebody who's eating fine, we try to remove added sugar or simple sugars, or like syrup, sugar, desserts from a regular diet. However, again, it might become ally in our nutrition plan when patients are not eating. For example, you say chemotherapy got me so bad, I'm not eating anything. Do you want an ice cream? Okay, an ice cream is high calories, is high fat, is high sugar, but it's a source of calories. So yes, we use sugar as an ally when we need. In a daily basis, if you're eating well, you don't need to have sugar. I don't understand this question. Does radiotherapy apply to the chemotherapy rules of today? I'm not sure if I understand that question. So if the person who asked maybe can rephrase it.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, it's just to know, because every time you're referring to after, not to do it until after chemotherapy, or to wait 4 weeks after chemotherapy, is it the same as if you're doing radiotherapy?
Okay, so in terms of antioxidants or mega doses of vitamins, yes, it's the same, because the treatment it's meant to oxidate. For the fruits that I mentioned, like grapefruit, green tea, orange sevilla, pomelo, star fruit, those, they don't have any interaction with the radiotherapy. It's only really with the chemotherapy agent. And for the neutropenia or the immune system depression, is mostly with the chemotherapy. Usually radiotherapy doesn't go through that period.
And then one last one was, are oral cancer patients immunocompromised, or how do you know how immunocompromised?
So again, our basic measure is going to be the neutrophils. Yes, you are considered, if you ever went to chemotherapy, if you have a cancer, a diagnosis, even if it was years ago, you're always going to be considered as an immunocompromised patient. However, again, the levels, as you mentioned in your question, we're going to be very strict with the measures when your neutrophils are very, very low. And when the recovery, we're going to give you a little bit of a stretch in terms of diet. But yes, you're overall considered as an immunosuppressed patient.
I was wrong. There was one more last question. It asked, how do you know if eggs are pasteurized?
So you're gonna see it in the box. Like I said, like usually like eggs that we buy in the carton, like a full egg, is not pasteurized. So you have to cook egg. But I know that they sell the egg whites in like a carton of milk. So those, I think those are pasteurized because they go through industry. So just read it. Usually they put it in the ingredients. They should be pasteurized. But again, like the regular eggs that you buy, like in a carton of eggs, those are not.
Any last questions?
Yeah, sorry, I just want to be clear. So the eggs, we do not eat them in a carton.
I mean, you can, but it has to be cooked. So everything that you have to cook it, right? Because it goes through temperature. So your bacteria or your high risk of infection is put to zero.
Okay,
But yeah.
Sorry, so the eggs that are pasteurized, is that people are having those raw?
Well, because sometimes I get like sport people, they take like they use like smoothies and they put like white eggs without cooking. Or for example, if you're gonna do like a cream but for a pastry, sometimes you put it and you don't cook them. So
Okay.
those are not pasteurized and no safe. But like for example, a hard-boiled, or for example, if you wanna do a soft-boiled egg, it's not well cooked, so it's not pasteurized and it's not well cooked, so you shouldn't have it. So it should be a hard-boiled egg or scrambled eggs that you can be assured that they're going to be well cooked.
But does the yellow have to be well cooked too?
Yes.
If we have sunny side up, that's no good anymore.
That's not good anymore.
Oh.
You have to really well cook it very well.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, if not pasteurized cheeses, cooked, it's good. You can have it like eggs. Everything that is cooked, it goes. Let's say for that period where you kill the bacteria. For example, I put always the example: smoked salmon is not allowed because it's raw, but the smoked meat is allowed because you always put it through boil before eating. You never eat the smoked meat raw, right? So then it becomes like safer. Yeah, but for the cheeses, for example, cheeses that, for the fresh cheeses like brie or camembert, if you cook them, they should be fine. But for example, like blue cheese that you already have like a fungus growth, that you should avoid because it's already like you already have the bacteria growing on it.
Well, if there are no more questions.
Yeah, no moldy cheese. Yeah.
If there are no more questions, thank you all for coming, and thank you, Yamileth, for being our speaker today.
Thank you, everybody, for being present and got into until the end. Goat cheese, again, pasteurized, no fresh goat cheese. Or cook.
Perfect. Take care, everyone. There'll be a French version of this workshop available next week if anyone's interested as well. And other events are on the Hope and Cope calendar. So thank you all for coming. And thank you, Yamileth,
Have
for
a good
being
night,
here.
everybody.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.